we're gonna go ahead and pass on the pledge. 30 seconds of silence. So let's go ahead and get into it. Are we on?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So tonight's meeting, we have one agenda item, and that is Tomlinson Playscape.
And citizen communication.
Oh, sorry. Is there any citizen communication? Yep. Okay. So the idea tonight is I want to make sure that we are as efficient as possible with our time. So first, I'm going to make sure that we just go round robin 2 times when I want to speak, just efficiencies. And we're really going to stay focused on kind of the first step, which is the financing side of this. So we have talked to David Gray. You know, you guys have done some work so far. Sean does have some information for us to go into executive at the end, but we're not going to talk about the Playscape design. We don't know timing yet. It's really going to depend on the financing side of it. Our goal is to get a schedule and to communicate that out to be as transparent as possible with all residents. But tonight's focus is on the financing, the bonds, and where we go from here. So Trent was so kind to be here tonight. That's why I said he could go ahead and take off, because we're not gonna really delve into his part of it yet. We will have a call with you next week and go over, you know, some more stuff and then kind of plan our next special meeting if that's how we're gonna do it. We obviously wanna do this as quickly as possible, but truth be told, this isn't gonna happen overnight. So, I want to thank all of the experts because you guys have been down this road before, so we're really gonna rely on you for this. For residents that possibly are online, the board packet is on Blockhouse website. In there, you can see the inspection report. You can see, I think it's almost 40 pages. You can see where it failed, so you can understand why safety is our #1 concern, and why as soon as we got that inspection report, we had to shut down Tomlinson as soon as possible. And I don't think any of us would want to have to deal with a child being injured. So that was the responsible thing to do. Not the popular, but the responsible thing. We have also had Apache and Tonkawa inspected. Those inspection reports will be in the packet for next week at a regular meeting. I encourage residents to look at that as well and understand, we don't have to shut down those playscapes, but there are some pretty major things that we need to take care of. Some of it Lisa's already done, like the swing seats and different things that she could do with her authority, but there's gonna be some other items that we're gonna have to replace and make sure it's safe for everyone. This is a great opportunity to upgrade our playscape to really what they call inclusive, and you know, I was looking at some designs where parents can be on it with it. So it's unfortunate it happened, the timing, but we're making the best of it, and I think we're gonna end up with a really cool playscape for all residents. So with that said, Sean, do we want to start with you or David, or how do we want to do this?
Well, I think a nice overview to start with. So Lauren has this handout here, and that includes kind of a schedule. Do you mind if we go to Lauren first?
Yeah, that's great.
And questions might pop up along the way that either David or I might be able to speak to.
Okay.
Okay, so that first page is pretty much just giving you an overview of historical bonds, tax rate, where y'all are at, just background. If you go to the second page, that's where the schedule starts. So right now y'all are having your special meeting to decide your priority of what you want to be in the bonds. We have a little cash flow analysis for you to look at as well within the packet, just to see where we're currently predicting debt service tax rate would be at. If you look at the schedule under the special board meetings, kind of maybe more than one special meeting, it sounds like, but y'all are basically just hashing out what needs to go in with the bond. After that, you pretty much give David and his group the go-ahead to move forward. They typically need somewhere between 60 and 90 days to get their application for the TCEQ ready. Once that is done and it's been through all of your consultants to make sure that our information and his information are all the same, he would submit that to the TCEQ. I would anticipate that would likely be an expedited review, which is gonna be essentially 60 days for the TCEQ to look at it, make a determination on it, send their memo to us for your bond counsel, general counsel, engineer, and FA to review, make any changes that we noted in the TCEQ memo that were incorrect or need to be cleaned up. We send that with our signatures back. Usually within 7 days, we receive the order. After the order is received, it's another 30-day waiting period. So if anyone disagrees with the TCEQ order, they have an opportunity to appeal. Once that 30 days has elapsed, you are then allowed to sell the bonds. In between when the application is submitted and when the order comes out, that would be when your consultants are, particularly my group, sending out all of the documents, your notice of sale, your preliminary official statement, your distribution list, schedule of events, all of that to be reviewed, marked up, polished. In that same period, at one point at one of your meetings, we would come to you to ask for the board's permission to seek a rating on the bonds, as well as to seek municipal bond insurance. All of that would come in before we finalize your documents, and then we coordinate with Sean and his office and Jacqueline and Carol at McCall Parkhurst, your bond counsel, to get everything published at least 10 days before the sale date. And then the date of the sale, we open up the competitive bids. Whatever comes in as the lowest bid would be what we would present to you all. Right now, we are seeing between 4 to 6 bids on most municipal utility district bond issues right now. That kind of stays pretty consistent throughout the year. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more, but that 4 to 6 is usually about the range we see. We present all of that to you all. You would formally award the sale of the bonds to the low bidder. At that point, we then take that lovely preliminary official statement, turn it into a final official statement, send it back out for everybody to look at. That would have all of the information from the bond sale in it. Within a week, comments are all back, we finalized it, posted it. Usually by your next meeting, that's when we do the closings. So in between sale date and that date, my office is working with all of your consultants to get the information for reimbursements. We work with your auditor to make sure they have all of that information on your closing day, when the funds for the bonds are actually submitted by the initial purchaser to the district. At that point, you have your reimbursement report, which has gone through your auditor, and they have checked off that everything that everybody says they're owed is true. And those costs are distributed, and you all get the funds for the projects, as well as capitalized interest in any surplus funds, which may come from a lower interest rate depending on the market. From the last time we talked about bonds to this time, rates have gone down. So I put 4.75 in here for you. That would be starting on page 4.
Can I ask you a real quick question?
Yes,
So
please.
the board previously, and Ursula and I were on it, adopted a park plan.
Mhm.
Does that need any modifications?
I would say the only time it would need a modification is if in between when it was completed and when you get ready to do park bonds, if something has changed, such as a playscape needing to be completely replaced, that would probably be good to have in there. Just in case the AG's office wanted to have the master park plan as part of the documents that it reviews for the sale of the bonds in issuing its opinion. That's not a bad idea.
Okay, and we'll talk about that a little bit in executive as
Right.
well, so let's go ahead and stay with the
Yes.
finance side, please.
So what we've done is just 1 year of capitalized interest. That would basically just be for that first year of your interest and principal payments on this set of bonds. We would anticipate a little over 2.7 million, which could be used for your park improvements. Then you'll see your non-construction costs. I've updated this with everything that I had to date. So the soft cost could change slightly just because of a Moody's rating fee or reimbursement report fee. Other than that, it should be pretty similar to what you're seeing. The next page, you'll notice on page 5, I just did a 10-year bond. So that would actually drop your debt service payments after the first 4 years, now that we're in 24, by about half, just because it is a smaller size park bond at the 3.15. With that, and keeping the 25% coverage in your debt service fund balance, we would anticipate your debt service rate would go up a little over 2.25 cents. One thing I would say is it would be our recommendation. You'll notice that this assumes no growth since the 2023 certified assessed valuation. So we ran all of this as though come this year it's the exact same. We would recommend using all of that bond at once. That would help the district not incur additional interest or additional self-cost for consulting fees. Because otherwise, if you split it, then you're essentially
Are you saying use it or sell it all at once?
sell it all at
Okay.
once. So as many projects as you could put in with that would be our recommendation, just to save you all any additional interest or consulting fees. The next page, page 6, is just giving you that quick view of the actual debt service schedule. And then the last page is just using your current tax rate and current certified value and your budget that was approved. And then just like we do typically with your tax rate presentations or 3% inflation, just kind of guesstimating on your expenses, just so you can see what is happening there. Of course, that is assuming no change in your fire tax or anything like that. Questions on any of that?
Yes, let's go around the room. David Shoemaker, do you have any questions?
Just one more, and you're talking
Mhm.
on page, real quick, sorry. Page 4, you're mentioning, interest rate. You were saying, is it what you're seeing now a little bit lower than 4 points?
It is. I put it at 4.75 because obviously we don't know what the market's gonna do. And worst case scenario, that would give y'all surplus funds that could immediately be put back towards projects.
Yes, I appreciate the concern, I just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yes, typically because y'all do have a high rating, assuming that y'all stay the same, and with a shorter maturity, I would anticipate I can probably come down on that the closer we get, just as far as making sure the market hasn't moved too much. But like this week alone, some of those have been coming in around 4%.
Mhm.
So that just kind of gives you an idea, but the 4.75 was just there to be conservative.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Cool, Director Young?
One of the recommendations made was that we do this in a lump sum. And as we go through this process, we could be going at it from two different directions the entire time, like, well, we're gonna do this now and then this later. I would like us to maybe agree to go for the one lump sum, and then if at some point we have a reason to break from that paradigm of thinking, then present an argument for that, and maybe we could shift gears, but I would like to move forward as we discuss and debate this with the intent, if we can agree that we're all going to go for that lump sum, as we do this. Can we,
Well-
just not agree, or?
I think, let's put that on let's vote on it Wednesday night, because I want Director Johnson to be able to weigh in on that.
Okay,
And maybe we can all process it a little bit, but I don't think that's an unreasonable request for.
okay, yeah, I just don't wanna have the debate going back and forth on
Yeah.
do it or don't.
No, we need to make a decision and stand with that. But
Right.
yeah, if you guys are okay to vote on that next Wednesday, that's even a win. Director Roberts, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think just some clarification on kind of what Robert was talking about was, when you said that we could just use all of it, but I want the board to understand, what does that mean? If you're really saying just sell all of it, so we have the authorization and approval to do that, but we doesn't mean we have to use it right then.
No, so once that money is essentially hanging out in your
Sure.
capital projects fund,
Okay.
then you do end up on a timeline in which you have to have it used, but it's not as though you get that money and it's okay, it needs to go right back out the door because we've got it spent. It's not nearly that.
We don't have to go through this whole process again.
Right,
is
it's
what-
not
is what
that
I'm saying.
immediate,
Yeah.
that you have to do it right then.
Okay,
So economically, it'd be very wise to go ahead and do that because of cost, upfront costs and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, that
and
makes sense.
especially because I just wouldn't want the district to then have additional
Sure.
interest accruing, especially because right now, y'all are gonna not have bonds to refund. So, and who knows, depending on how this would, if there would be rates low enough to make it worth refunding, so.
Yeah. okay.
Thank you.
I haven't asked a question yet, so just real quick, so thank you very much for the detailed timeline, that's very helpful, and I heard 30 days here, 45 days here. Can you give me it's gonna be a 6-month process to get
It
through
ends up being
a year?
about an 8-month process.
An 8-month process?
That's
I'm gonna throw
ass-
out 9 months.
That, I was gonna say, that's assuming everything comes out of the TCQ on time,
Okay,
that we don't run into any hiccups in between the beginning and the end. But typically an 8 to 9 month process, but you could have these potentially sold before the end of the year.
okay,
And Ursula, I'll try to help add some detail in that, and I think Laura and I are on the same page.
okay,
And then also in there, I know y'all noticed the little flag, I just put in there the bond language for the park bonds, just in case you wanted to look at it.
we're gonna go into executive and
Yeah.
discuss that, but thank
So-
you very much, okay. So, with that, can I go into you, David, with
Sure.
the other option, the commercial loan option while we were, or do you wanna talk about?
Just a few comments on the bonds,
Sure.
if that's okay. and
Sure.
I will try not to duplicate, because Lauren did a very good job on going over that. Some of y'all have not been around when the district sold bonds, and this is your kind of first experience, and that's fine. It's a fairly regulated experience by the water code. I think you've got a good group of professionals who have gone through multiple bond issues, not only for y'all, but in other districts. So I think you're getting good advice as you go along. Ultimately, y'all be determine that or not. A couple key things. One, and Lauren's pointed out by giving you a sample, I call summary of costs. It's on page, thank you for doing that. 4, thank you.
Mhm.
If you go forward, and I hear that you're contemplating going forward, selling all the bonds at one time that were authorized by the voters, that's a bond issue of $3,152,000. And out of that, you don't get $3,152,000 to go use on hardscape and things like that. Laura's did an estimate, and I will concur with her that it won't vary very, very much, your soft cost, but it's gonna produce you about $2,710,000 per estimate. That's the number that's gonna be used for funding, whether it's for the playscape or whatever other improvements. It's used for funding of any design that goes with that by anybody, permitting, fees, anything that's associated with those improvements or that improvement, it can be multiple improvements, that's eligible to be expensed out of this, okay? If you can't get it in that number, you're gonna have to find some other sources of revenue, okay? Just, so, I always wanna point out that people think, well, we're selling $3 million of bonds, now you don't have $3 million, okay? You come away with somewhat shorter. And if the interest rates go down a little bit, then that figure will go up a little bit incrementally. The other thing is, it all really starts, and I'm not gonna, I appreciate Lisa sending this out to everybody. This is just kind of some ramblings of starting from day one, how it goes through, and trying to identify the key players, which is consistent with the information I believe that Lauren handed out. But one thing, it really starts with the board, and that's where you're starting. You started that, we put it on the sideline for probably some very good reasons. Now we're revisiting that. But the first part of it is deciding what you want to put in it, okay? And that may seem very obvious, but that's where it starts. And after that's decided, and there's a lot that goes into that decision, I realize, then the process really can roll fairly succinctly after that. The process, if I allocated in my mind about 60 days for the board to come up with what, and I can put this in writing to you.
Okay.
Roughly 60 days to figure out what you want to put in this bond issue. That's deciding if you're going to do the playscape, or if you're going to do something more or less, et cetera, okay? Subject to the bond authorization, which I know council is going to talk to you about. Prep the bond issue package, which is an effort in my office, and it's got Lauren involved in it. It has legal counsel involved in it. There's some things that come from your bookkeeper also. I'm estimating 60 days for that. It can be done a little quicker than that. I don't want to speak for others, but typically it takes about 60 days. I think Lauren alluded to 60 to 90. I appreciate the 90 days, but you probably want on the shorter end of that, okay? Then TCQ, expedited approval, you get comments back from the state at 60 days. I believe that this bond issue will meet the necessary parameters to be filed for expedited review. TCQ will take their 60 days, which is fine, and they'll issue an order, but it'll be a draft order, and there'll be, your legal counsel will look at that, as well as your financial advisor will look at it. And then we say, okay, issue the order. That takes them a couple more weeks to issue the order. That's what we've been experiencing. I know that varies a little bit. So when I talk about TCQ from the date it's filed to the time you've got a final order, but you can't advertise those bonds for sale, start that process, I allocate 90 days, not just the 60 for the expedited review.
Okay.
It's a little conservative, but that's what we've been experiencing. Then getting in Lauren's business about advertising the preliminary offering statement, advertising, taking bids, convening with the board as to what those bids are. Y'all make a decision whether to award to the bidder on that. And then you have an audit that goes on, and then you have a funding that takes place about 30 days after that. That whole time period's about 60 days. I don't want to dictate for Lauren, but that's about 60 days too. So when you add up all those 60 days I'm talking about, you get up to 270 days. I think you can do it in that. You can probably do it a little bit shorter, as Lauren indicated, maybe 8 months, but you are looking at a time frame in which you have those funds available. Okay. Key point of that is majority of bond issues are to pay for things that usually a developer does, and it's a reimbursement. Well, we don't have a developer to build a playscape for us. Those days are over. So we don't have today a reimbursement, a set of plans that we're reimbursing off of, okay? And typically you have that when you go in with the bond issue, you submit that information with the bond issue. Typically it's been through the review process, et cetera. You may have gotten bids on it, but you don't have to, but you've got something that's approved. And then the staff looks at that and says, okay, well, you're issuing bonds to pay for that. We get that, check the box. I don't think we're going to be in that position when we submit the bond application. I suspect that we're going to have some line items for budgets of what we want to put in there, but we may not have approved construction plans and specifications for everything. So we're going to be asking for authority from the state to issue bonds that will be used for those types of improvements. we've seen in the past that the state handles that a couple different ways. One, the more predominant way, is they've approved it, because what you're doing is typically gonna be in accordance with what you can do, okay? But they're gonna issue it with a caveat that the funds be, once they're sold, that the funds be placed in escrow. And those funds are in escrow until such time as you provide those approved plans and things like that, and details, and then the funds are released back to you. It's a little bit of a, could be a little bit of a delay, okay? More recently, and Sean and I visited a little bit about that, he may want to get into more detail. Apparently staff at TCEQ is approving the use of those funds coming out, and essentially with a I'll call it a directive in the order that the use of those funds be reviewed by the district board of directors and making sure that they're used properly and spent properly. With that, if we can get that out of them, then you come out with the ability to start spending that money, even though you may not have approved plans that day. You don't have to go back for the release of escrow, if that makes any sense. I don't think we will know that, and we could do some additional inquiries with staff about that. We did a preliminary inquiry to that effect. Once the bond election was done, we actually thought we were going to issue bonds at that time. We made some inquiries. I think it's worth revisiting that with staff. Because it seems to be a little bit of loosening going on their part to allow us the flexibility. We want the flexibility because I don't think we want to go through the process of final design, approved set of plans, and then do a bond issue or then get the money. I think we want to expedite our financing, as you alluded to. What's the financing about? So that'll be something that we, in the meantime, can probably do some inquiries at the state, give you better direction on that. Okay. That's the bonds. Private financing. There are some other available funds out there. You're not doing a water improvement, so I think the Water Development Board does loans, low interest rate loans. I don't think your projects that I understand really meet that criteria for those loans with the Development Board. So if you've heard about the Development Board, it's great if we were putting a storage tank or something like that. That's not what we're doing. Okay, so that's pretty much off the table. Another way is commercial banks, and we've had some districts go to a bank and essentially enter into an agreement with the bank, subject to legal counsel's recommendation on that and review, enter into a note, if you will, just a promissory note that you agree to pay it back. Banks have looked favorably in our experience on that. Typically, those rates are significantly higher than what you're going to achieve through the bond process. So there's that caveat. There's probably a few others in there too. We've seen banks loan up to almost 10 years on some of those things. So it's not a car loan, it's not a 5-year note, but they can stretch it out, but may not be able to stretch out as long as a bond issue, because some bonds, not getting in Laura's business, are issued up for some 20 years and things like that, but at a lower interest rate. Okay. One advantage though is you typically don't have the soft costs associated with it. Okay. And so you have some work to get the loan done. You want to show them what you're trying to do, but you typically don't have the costs that are associated with advertising bonds going through TCEQ, et cetera, like that. So those are the two options that we've generally seen. The commercial lending is well, let me rephrase it. There's one order, bond anticipation note. I know we hate bands, but I know I'm going to suffer from that. I know with your boss. Having said that, a BAN, it's a bond anticipation note, is an acronym. It's essentially issuing, and Laura can speak to this in more detail, but it's a process where you issue a note, essentially, and the guarantee behind the note is that it'll be repaid through the issuance of a bond. Those are typically short-term financing options that they're good for a year, then you have to sell the bond a year, then you repay the note. It's got some extra costs with it, but it might, if and they're not, Laura can tell you how they're received in the marketplace and all that, but if you hear about bans, there is something to that effect, whether it's legitimate for this purpose or not. Financial advisor will tell you that. So bonds is certainly, I think you're more cheaper, less expensive in some ways. Commercial note can be another option, and subject to legal counsel telling you that's okay to do that. Those are the three that we've seen.
Okay,
So, can
so-
I ask a real quick question?
we're gonna go around the table, so we'll start with
Yes, ma'am.
Director Roberts.
So what is the deadline to sell the bonds? I know I've asked that before, but I don't recall it. Like, we bought, we've had the bond election.
You
Is
don't have
there,
any deadline.
I thought there
okay.
was a timeline. No?
You
Okay,
have no deadline associated with the bond, that's a bond authorization.
okay.
Think of it as a line of credit that never expires.
Okay, so what are the other options?
I
Like,
would very quickly jump in
Jump in,
there.
yeah.
There is the concept of stale authorization that the AG's office will look at, but to David's point, we're well within the scope of being
Okay.
acceptable.
Thank you for
This
that
is 20,
clarification.
30 years later.
Yeah,
thank you. Okay, that's good. So is there an option, I mean, and Taylor's on the call, and maybe Lauren, you can answer this one. If we could go in and, I mean, the project may be just a $900,000 deal. I mean, could we go in and use some of the reserves? And, I mean, I'm not encouraging it, but I'm just asking. But I mean, and then, just because of the timeline, if we're looking at 9 months, we've got a playscape that can't, I mean, I'm just trying to look at.
you talk about repaying a loan
Yes.
yourself almost.
So,
Yes.
But you
it's
got.
kind of a two-part answer.
Your project estimate's more than $900,000.
Well, I know, but I'm just thinking if we could keep within a certain dollar amount, we might be able to afford it.
So the board could decide, that they want to pay for it out of surplus funds.
Mhm.
That is one option where you're just done, you're not touching the bonds, you're finished. The other part of that is, say the board gets started on it, you're putting out money first, but it is included in the bond, then the district can essentially get paid back at funding
Right.
for that money. So that's why I was like, it's kind of a two-part
That's
answer.
very
I
typical.
like that one better.
That's very typical.
Yeah,
And that could even be for soft costs, not even the construction, but if you want to get
Right.
going with your design, your
Exactly.
entitlements and stuff like
Get
that.
it kind of started.
Yes.
Exactly,
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
exactly.
Director Shoemaker.
Thank you.
Bond anticipation notes, I have an idea what this answer is, I have an idea why this has got issues, but I would assume the interest rate on those, even though it's backed by the bond and is short, because it's a short thing, I'm assuming it would add a significant cost, right, on doing that.
It's, well, I can speak a little bit to bands, Lauren, if you don't mind. In my experience, bands, it's not the interest rate that's really bad. They're usually a liquidity tool for developers to get their money
Mhm.
early. And so in my experience, this has been a slightly different interest rate environment. They were actually 1% or something like that.
Okay.
And the great thing for a district, it's secured by the corpus of the bond funds and not by your tax revenue or anything like that. To David's point, they're not popular in the Austin market. I have heard anecdotally that the band market has kind of dried up, only because it was, back in the day, bands were selling 1.25 to 1.75%. Now we can all put money with 2 clicks into our money market account and get 5.2%. So I think that's the reason that your short-term debt options have diversified quite a bit. And I don't think it wasn't a big market anyway, and I don't think too many people are looking to invest in bands nowadays. So I think it's kind of the market that has spoken, but that's just my impression. That was a couple months old, so I just thought. Okay for that.
and council is right, you do not see it in Central Texas very often. You see a few out of Houston. It used to be more popular, as he said, it's not really used so much. Typically, when you see them used, it's because of, say, a smaller developer who's putting out a lot of capital on their end and just trying to get some of that back a little bit faster, which doesn't necessarily apply or really work in your favor here.
Okay, Shoemaker, anything else?
No, yeah, no.
Okay, so when I was discussing commercial loans with you, I was envisioning, again, to expedite the process, Director Roberts, is to borrow that money from the bank, and then as soon as we got through the bond process, we pay off that loan immediately.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be a 5-year loan or a 10-year loan. So, but my question is, and this is a whole timing thing, is if we did that, if we borrowed that money, would that impact our credit rating? Because they see this loan. Also, to what Director Roberts said, if we use 900 of our reserves, is that gonna impact our credit rating? So it's a whole kind of timing thing. How can we do this so we're expediting this and getting a playscape up as quickly as possible
Right.
without impacting our credit rating and the best way to borrow the money. So that's kind of what I'm throwing out to the experts, is to kind of help us work through that.
I would counsel you, I'll jump in and then they can correct me, throw the low hanging fruit out there. You know, you've got some upfront costs on this, that they're not gonna be $900,000, okay? And I know you weren't necessarily suggesting you had to spend $900,000, but there's gonna be some upfront costs, particularly if you go in, you're gonna have to get this approved. You're gonna have to get it drawn up, you're gonna have to get it approved, it's gonna involve other people. Unfortunately, I believe that approval is gonna involve the city of Cedar Park, through that process. Those types of work can get started as soon as you decide what you want to do. And I know, frankly, y'all have a pretty good idea, at least back here, what you want to do. And you may have a good idea in some other areas. You can combine that and package that together and get that started, okay? You can pay for those things. I'm talking about, I'm not trying to dictate anybody's fees when I say this, but you're talking about the range of $100,000, $200,000, you know, so it's not a huge amount of money, not that that's not a lot of money, it is in my house. But, you know, you get that going and I would envision something like that personally coming out of surplus, operating funds. Yeah, I mean, I know Taylor's on the line. Last time I looked at that, you had $5 million or something. I stand to be corrected, but you had some money in there. Maybe that's surplus bond funds too, but you had a combination. At operating funds and then reimburse it. I don't know that level of expenditure has a detrimental effect on your credit. I would suggest not, because I see other districts spend with less reserves than y'all have, spend equivalent amounts, and they're in the middle of issuing bonds in an active developer type district.
Yeah.
And I've never heard a financial advisor or a bookkeeper come back and said that level, it's not to say that I'm prejudicing ours, but I've never heard them say, oh, that kind of level of expenditure made a big difference in your final bond deal.
Okay.
So I will give you that somewhat
Okay.
anecdotal
Okay.
response.
I appreciate that, Lauren. Do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, he's right. When you're looking at just getting the process started with design approvals, some engineering, city fees here and there, that's not gonna be enough for, say, Moody's to go, well, downgrade them.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you were to get a bank loan, they're gonna look at that. And they're gonna look at what you have in your reserves, and there would probably be questions there of, well, why are you doing this instead of that? I know Moody's has been more conservative in the last year, so although I can't tell you definitively how they would go, I'm sure that would raise questions on their end as to why that route is being taken. Not to say it can't be explained,
Yeah.
and they would be happy.
Yeah.
It would just probably be in their set of questions.
Yeah, but not a huge red flag, but just a set of questions to explain. Okay.
Probably, it would also depend on amount of loan.
Okay. All
All
right,
of
that
that.
makes sense. Director Young, do you have
I have
more?
nothing to add right now.
Okay.
May I
All
ask
right.
one more question?
Oh, sure. Okay, Dr. Roberts.
So since we do have Trent here, so I've got a few questions for you. If we engage your services, what do you see as far as the timeline on design or assisting with the design? Because apparently we have to have a design, take it to the city of Cedar Park to get approval, am I correct?
You have to have a site development plan filed, which the design of the facility is part of, yes.
So Trent, do you have any timeline, I mean, what schedule looks like? Because we've got all the other schedules, but now we just move you in there with it.
3 to 6 months, depending on approvals and whatever then the permitting on top of that, whatever that needs to be.
To come up with a design or to finalize?
Finalize full documents.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and,
Just if I can interject.
sure.
You know, I think my understanding is that the playscape replacement has been the primary focus, I won't say the only one. That's not amounting to the entire amount of money that you're gonna end up having out of a bond sale to use. It's a portion. You get started on a portion of that and maybe not do the final design or even the design at all, the other pieces, and just get the money. If we can get it approved by TCEQ to release the money, that's sitting there for use when you want to. So you're not trying to front the whole $2.7 million, or $2.7 million all at once. You might be funding a couple $100,000, even if you went under construction, maybe it's $400,000 or $500,000. The estimates that I've seen, which appear to be pretty tight and y'all may change it back there, but those estimates are not the $2.7 million, they're a fraction of it, okay?
Well, maybe half is
So
kind
you
of
could
what
get-
I've seen.
You could
Yeah.
get started on a piece of that.
Yeah.
And go through the necessary plan approval process on a piece and do the latter later on, and that'd get that going quicker.
Okay, so, Trent did prepare, this is why I'm talking to these two guys, a great park master's plan for us. So, and know you guys have done this, but would you please send that to the full board again? So you all can see what he's put together, because what I'm envisioning is that we go back to that and modify, really include the playscape, and then, maybe focus on the bathrooms at top or something, whatever. But we don't wanna completely start from scratch. You've already got a great product for us, but let's make it a little bit better. So as far as next steps, so I think we all kind of understand the process of the bond and the money and kind of some of our options here. Sean, what are next steps? It's 7:11. I was hoping that we were gonna be out of here by 7:30, but we'll do what we need to do. But next steps.
So next steps, I think, would be to, well, I think we want to make decisions on what's gonna be included in the bond, and David has sort of alluded to that. And I think from my perspective, once you get to that point, David can finalize the bond app. And to me, the clock starts ticking when you finalize the list of projects for inclusion within the bond app.
Correct.
And whether it's your regular February meeting, your regular March meeting, you'll adopt a resolution to actually submit the bond application to the TCEQ.
Yeah.
So I would say from now until whenever that date is, you'd want to work towards finalizing the projects that would be included in the bond app.
And by finalizing, it's still kind of conceptual, okay? You don't have to have final bid prices, you don't have to have final
right.
drawings, it's just and I know you'll have a really good idea what you do back there, Lisa's done a real good job in putting
It's
that
the
together.
wording.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
wording, so let's figure out what you wanna do to come up with that.
Okay.
And you only maybe start on one of those, but your park plan may serve as I would offer that as a menu of things to perhaps supplement your bond issue with, if you're gonna do the playscape, pick from some of those, something to think about. So, you've got a lot done, you really
Yeah.
do.
The only thing I would offer too is that you've got the opportunity to run certain paths contemporaneously, right? So
Yes.
you get into TCQ with your bond app,
Yes,
you've got your.
you can do design, you can do permitting.
Yeah.
So whatever you decide to build, it may not be all at once. You may do part of it in 26.
And
Yeah, so let's see if I'm being too aggressive here, but I have a call with you and Lisa next week. I know we have a meeting on Wednesday. We have some of this on the agenda already. Can we prepare a draft of this language that we're discussing Wednesday night? If you guys may all just, no way, whatever. But, because I heard when you say February or March, I'm like, oh, no, I want to speed it up. So let's try to get a draft. I know you're freaking out right now because I can tell on your face. It'd be great. But,
Me or him?
maybe both of you.
Both?
It's a very drafty draft. I'm just trying to say, let's put something together, and then maybe we have a special meeting early February.
Yeah.
And maybe finalize it, or maybe finalize the final draft, and then the February meeting, we can finalize that.
I would encourage y'all to, I know how much we all love to meet, okay? But I would encourage y'all to look at that and get as much information as you can and get comfortable with what you're gonna put into that. So that when it goes in, you are somewhat committed. You can always change your mind, okay? You can change your mind after the bond issue's filed. You can pull it back and decide to go again. That's not, I'll take what you wanna do.
Okay.
But spend some time in these types of, I call this a work session, is really conducive to try to make you progress on some of those things. You've got a lot, I don't need to tell you guys that, you got a lot on your agenda of regular meetings.
The other thing I'll offer, if you mean reviewing his bond app,
The language, we have to clean up the language a little bit, which I guess is, yes.
So yeah, because to be sure, the bond app itself isn't typically for board consumption. That's really
It's a
dotting i's and
TCQ
crossing
document,
t's.
follows their format.
Yeah, so the primary thing
Boring.
you guys will look at and actually consider is the resolution.
Okay.
Which, you
Yeah.
know, certainly, I think to your point, we can talk about more next week, and possibly kind of go from
Yeah.
there.
Okay, I just,
You
I-
wanna push it, and I mean, you
I
wanna
do.
expedite it.
I think we all do.
Yeah, and that's, if you don't tend to kind of get behind things, sometimes they lag, I mean, it's just human nature.
Right.
That helps us understand the urgency, which, you know, I think we've got a pretty good, speaking for all of us, I think we've got a pretty good grasp of it. You wanna move on it,
Yeah.
we'll try to get that done. I think a realistic date for your resolution is really at the earliest, the February meeting at the earliest.
Okay.
And just be candid, but
Alright,
there's a lot
special
of work,
meeting in
there's a lot of
February?
work to be done, okay? February regular meeting.
Ursula, I don't mean to interrupt the conversation, but I do just want to jump in really quickly about the financials. Because I know y'all have been discussing that. Again, the reserves are always a little bit of a hot button for me, but we do have over 10 months of reserves right now on hand. And again, just kind of quick math, 1 month of reserves is about $471,000. So again, depending on how much this specific project will cost, we do have a little bit of wiggle room to prepay and then reimburse your operating fund once those bonds do fund. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Again, don't want to just utilize all of your operating funds for this project, but we do have a little bit that we could utilize to prepay.
Thank you.
And one thing you can do to help kind of expedite this for yourselves is be thinking about what you wanna add besides, I think you've got a pretty good idea what you're about, thinking about things, you kind of alluded to bathrooms and things like that. Think about that, whether you're working with Trent or who are you working on that, you know, try to help with cost estimates on that, that'll be part of, an integral part of the bond application.
Okay.
That could be part of the park plan, not like that plan amendment.
Yeah,
So
very good.
it'd be a little two-page deal, we put onto the back, where we update what we did for you from the scheduling and the budgets for all the different park things. That's the 2 sheets that we can update for you and
Okay.
reprioritize, and that'll get you what you need to be able
Yeah.
to validate.
And just to distinguish, and I've had conversations with some of you about this, Trent's done your master park plan, that's the big design, very inclusive document. There's also a park plan under chapter 49, which is a 1-page resolution that you attach Trent's master park plan to. But we could do that contemporaneously as well, same meeting.
Okay. Do we have an engagement contract or document with you? Do we need to do that prior to proceeding, working with you, or do we need to do anything?
So we had actually promised a park plan amendment, 1 year into the park plan, to meet with you guys.
Okay.
So, I don't know where we're at with that, but I'd be happy to just come meet with you.
Okay.
If it's just updating the 2 pages, we'll just get up and get that done for you, that way you guys can keep moving forward.
Okay, and then if we engage your services going forward, like, I don't know if you've ever project managed something like this. I think it'd probably be good to have a project manager.
Yeah, we just finished a $1.5 million playscape for Travis County Parks,
Where?
Southeast Metro.
Okay, that might be worth going and looking at, is it?
It's an all abilities, it's the first all abilities playground in Travis County.
Cool.
Didn't y'all do the one on Auditorium Shores?
Well, with my previous company, yes.
Oh, that's right, okay, sorry, oops.
Okay, so again, I just want to kind of get your costs, figure out your role and put that in the budget, so.
And that's gotta go through the city, which we can help you with on that. It's kind of a site plan process that frankly, the other commercial sites go through, ours is much less complicated than that.
Okay, great, good. Okay, so I don't know if there's a whole lot more to discuss tonight. Sean, do we need to go into executive?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go into executive, thank you for staying. Okay, we are out of the executive session, no decisions were made. We're gonna go ahead and direct our counsel, Mr. Abbott, to work with McCall on some of the language for the bond.
Summary.
Summary of costs.
Summary costs, just looking at some of the categories. So we'll get that going. So our next meeting, do we have anything else to cover on this tonight? Okay, I think this was a really good meeting. I think we all have a really good idea where we need to go and what we're looking at. Will you bring Director Johnson up to speed, please, whenever he's around? I guess you could, right?
Yeah, you talk about some self-unrestricted covenants anyways.
Okay, so that's not a walking quorum, okay,
You can call me too.
okay.
Yeah, and I'll probably tell him, I'll probably do it and tell him
Okay,
to talk.
that's,
about
I just wanna make sure that he's up to speed with us, so.
Yeah.
Our next meeting is next Wednesday, so we will discuss the bonds a little bit more. For any residents that may be on, the call, I wanna really stress and emphasize that every director here, we did not wanna tear down that playscape, but safety was our main concern. And we had to do what we had to do, but we are all committed to getting a new improved and, playscape up as soon as possible, but it is gonna take time. We have to work through the financing, we have to work through the design, but it's, we all raise kids here, some grandkids, we know the importance of playscapes, and just, the other important note is that we do have 2 playscapes in the district, we have one at Apache and one at Tonkawa, and we have lots of trails that people can explore, so please be patient with us as we go through this process.
We'll need their input too, like when you ask for
Oh,
some of the
absolutely,
hearings, you
yeah.
definitely want them to come and give their
Yeah,
input.
and maybe we even do a town
There's gonna be
hall.
parts that we definitely need
In my
their.
notes is to do a town
Yeah,
hall.
like we did when
Yeah.
we did the pool improvement, I think that was really well received, so we can work with Trent on that.
Okay, we'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Okay, great, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to-
Second.
All right, thank you, everyone.